Welcome to the Vibes Lab, your front row seat to the science behind VIA, the Vibes AI agentic platform making everyday brain health accessible to all. Every episode is designed to reveal insights that will enhance your cognitive health and well-being. Follow us to grab your lab key and experience limitless intelligence.
Welcome to the deep dive. You know, we've received some really interesting material from you all, focusing on, well, how our digital world might be messing with our heads. There's this feeling, right, that mental fog, finding it hard to focus, feeling scattered. Some people are even calling it brain rot.
It's definitely a term that resonates, yeah.
So our mission today is to dig into these sources you sent, see what's really going on, and explore something pretty cool, sound therapy as a potential fix.
Exactly. It's not just about defining the problem, but looking at, proactive ways to maybe get some mental clarity back.
We've got cognitive science stuff, therapy ideas, even specific sound tools mentioned in the materials. Let's try and connect the dots.
Absolutely. The resources paint a pretty clear picture of this digital overload effect, but also point towards this, non-invasive sound approach. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so this brain rot, based on what you've seen in the sources, what's the core issue? What are we actually talking about here?
Well, brain rot, as described, is basically this cluster of cognitive issues. Think mental sharpness fading.
Yeah, like dulling down.
Exactly. Declines in thinking clearly, that fogginess you mentioned, and a real struggle with attention spans. And it seems like it's not just any digital content.
Right, it's the type.
Yeah, it's the low-value stuff, those endless short videos, the doom scrolling.
Yeah.
That fragmented information seems particularly tough on the brain.
That makes total sense. It feels like you're swimming in information, but absorbing nothing. So what are the signs someone might notice day to day?
Memory could be one. Forgetting things you just read or heard. Attention just feeling scattered, easily pulled away. And just this pervasive mental fatigue, feeling drained even if you haven't done much demanding mental work. The sources really link this back to that constant shallow digital intake.
So this isn't just in our heads, subjectively. There are actual brain changes happening, neurologically speaking.
Precisely. The sources mention disruption to the default mode network.
Okay, what's that responsible for again?
That's your brain's sort of idle mode.
Yeah.
But it's crucial. It's active during daydreaming, reflection, creative thinking. Constant digital noise seems to throw it off kilter.
Okay.
And then there's the stress aspect. Prolonged digital immersion is linked to higher cortisol levels.
The stress hormone, right.
Yeah. And we know chronic stress isn't great for thinking clearly. So it's kind of a double whammy, disrupted internal processing and elevated stress.
Okay, wow. That paints a serious picture. Which makes the idea of sound therapy pretty compelling, actually. How can just listening to sounds help with all that?
The key concept popping up in the sources is brainwave entrainment.
Entrainment.
Yeah. It's the idea that when you listen to specific frequencies, certain rhythms or tones, your brain's own electrical activity, its brainwaves, can start to sync up with that external sound.
So your brain kind of tunes in.
That's a good way to put it. It naturally aligns itself.
So different sounds could nudge our brains into different states. How does that connect to fixing brain fog or focus?
Exactly. Let's look at gamma waves. They're in the 25 to 80 hertz range.
Right.
The sources really focus on 40 hertz specifically.
40 hertz gamma, what's special about that?
It seems critical for cognitive clarity, like sharpening your mental edge. It's linked to boosting BDNF.
BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
That's the one. Super important for neuroplasticity, helping brain cells connect and survive. Think, learning, memory.
So more BDNF is like fertilizer for the brain.
Yeah, that's actually a great analogy. And studies show this 40 hertz stimulation improves the connection, the coherence between key brain areas.
Like which ones?
The prefrontal cortex, that's your executive function hub, and the hippocampus, crucial for memory. Better communication there means better thinking.
Okay, that makes sense.
And get this 2024 trial you sent over. It found that using 40 hertz binaural beats improved working memory accuracy by 22%.
22%. In people with these brain rot symptoms.
Exactly. That's a pretty noticeable improvement.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. I saw something called the brain song mentioned too. How does that fit in?
Right, the brain song. It's described as an audio tool using these 40 hertz gamma waves. One source said it's about 17 minutes. Another mentioned 7 minutes, so there might be different versions.
Okay, bit of variation there.
Yeah, but the key is the 40 hertz. Users reportedly experienced about a 30% reduction in self-reported brain fog.
30% reduction, that's also quite significant.
It is, and some research even hints that this gamma entrainment might help reduce neuroinflammation, particularly in the hippocampus.
Which we know is linked to memory issues. Okay, so gamma is for clarity and focus. What about the other brain waves mentioned? Beta, theta, delta?
Good question. Beta waves, they're faster, like 13 to 30 hertz. They're associated with active focus, analytical thought, potentially good for cutting through digital distractions.
Okay, like an antidote to scrolling brain.
Maybe. Then you have theta waves, slower, 4 to 7 hertz, linked more to emotional regulation, creativity, problem-solving, things that can get kind of suppressed by constant screen time.
And delta, those are the really slow ones.
Yep, 0.5 to 4 hertz. Delta is crucial for deep restorative sleep. And we know sleep is vital for memory consolidation, which often gets messed up by late-night phone use.
So it's like a whole toolkit of frequencies for different brain needs. What about those solfeggio frequencies? They sounded a bit different.
They are interesting. The sources highlighted too. 417 hertz, called the frequency of change.
Change? How so?
The idea is it might help dissolve mental rigidity, promote adaptability, useful if you feel stuck in foggy thinking patterns.
Okay, breaking out of a rut. And the other one?
528 hertz. That's one sometimes called the miracle tone.
Miracle tone, right? Bit of a bold claim.
It is. The purported benefits relate to things like DNA repair and boosting cellular energy. The thinking is it might counteract some oxidative stress from all the digital exposure.
Cellular level stuff. So, stepping back, how do these sounds help with the stress component of brain rot? We talked about cortisol earlier.
Right. Several sources suggest frequencies like that 528 hertz and 417 hertz can help activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system? The opposite of fight or flight.
Exactly. Activating it helps lower cortisol. One source even mentioned a potential 40% reduction, which is quite dramatic.
40%, wow.
And it's not just tones. Vibroacoustic therapy was also mentioned. Think special massage chairs emitting tuned vibrations.
Vibrations, how does that help?
The theory is these resonant vibrations can help align frequencies within your body's cells, maybe easing some physical tension linked to mental fog.
So sound affecting us physically, too. Interesting. You mentioned some specific studies and examples earlier. What results really stood out?
Well, that 2025 Vibes AI study was notable. They used a 111 hertz binaural beat, apparently derived from combining the 417 hertz and 528 hertz frequencies.
Okay, a blend. What did they find?
After 4 weeks, just 20 minutes a day, users showed a 35% improvement in attention and a 50% drop in mental fatigue.
50% less fatigue. That's huge.
It really is. Significant results for key brain rot symptoms.
Any other example?
Yeah, there was a finding about chemotherapy patients. Using 40 hertz sound combined with light therapy, they showed cognitive benefits similar to healthy people. That suggests it might work broadly, not just for digital overload.
That's really promising. Wide applicability.
And the data on the brain song, again, inducing those theta-delta shifts, the slower waves, and linking to a 45% reduction in anxiety scores for Gen Z users. This correlated with more alpha waves, suggesting a state of relaxed alertness.
Relaxed alertness. That sounds like the opposite of anxious scrolling. So for someone listening thinking, yeah, I feel some of that fog, how could they realistically start using sound therapy?
The sources suggest this idea of microdosing sound, little bits throughout the day.
Right?
Maybe start the morning with some gamma, that 40 hertz, to sharpen focus, fight off that grogginess, especially if you're scrolling late.
Okay, a morning boost.
Then in the evening, perhaps switch to theta-delta blends, 4 to 7 hertz range. Help unwind from screens, maybe encourage mindfulness, reduce that urge to pick up the phone before bed.
That sounds quite manageable, actually. And I guess it works best alongside other good habits.
Absolutely. The sources stress the synergy. Sound therapy isn't magic, but it can really complement digital hygiene. Deleting distracting apps, silencing notifications.
Right. Makes sense.
And interestingly, one study suggested that using gamma entrainment instead of social media actually helped people stick to their screen time limits better.
So replacing the habit, not just resisting it.
Exactly. Giving your brain a beneficial alternative focus.
Clever. So looking ahead, where is this research going? What's next?
It seems personalization is a big theme. Developing frequency algorithms tailored to an individual's specific brainwave patterns, maybe based on EEG readings.
Wow, really customized sound.
Yeah. And also exploring hybrid approaches, combining sound therapy with things like biofeedback monitoring heart rate, for instance, to create more holistic interventions, addressing that mind-body link in brain rot.
This has been incredibly insightful. So the big picture seems to be that sound therapy offers, a really promising multi-pronged approach to this brain rot issue so many feel.
I think that's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to work on brainwaves, stress hormones, maybe even cellular health.
Addressing the neurological, the emotional, the physiological.
Precisely. The research you shared really highlights its potential. By exploring these frequencies, these tools, individuals might actually have a way to actively push back against that digital fog and reclaim some mental clarity.
So for everyone listening, maybe this deep dive offers some new pathways, perhaps looking into specific frequencies like 40 hertz or checking out resources like the Brain Song or those Vibes AI findings could be a starting point.
Yeah, and just thinking, now that you have maybe a deeper sense of how sound can influence your mental state, what new ways could you intentionally bring specific sounds into your daily routine? How might that support your well-being in our, let's face it, very digital world?